Hello, all. My name is Lee Einer. I'm a 69-year-old socialist, a Marxist, living in rural northern New Mexico. I was asked by some friends to explain why I'm a Marxist and a socialist, so fasten your seatbelts. Here we go. The short answer is I'm a Marxist because capitalism fucks things up. All right? And virtually all of them from a working class perspective. Let's start with the big question. The big question is, why is there society? Why do we have human society? Going back to when the first proto-humans started walking upright, we lived tribally. And we lived tribally so we could collectively meet one another's needs. You know, not everybody can be a hunter. You need somebody who knows herbal medicine. You need people who know how to make moccasins, and so on. That's why humans have always lived tribally and not in a solitary fashion. What would it look like if we still had that in mind, if we kept in our consciousness the fact that the reason we have a society is to meet one another's needs? Man, it would look a lot different than this, wouldn't it? Yeah, it would. You look at the workplace, and this is where one of the central contradictions of capitalism happens. In the American workplace, typically, the workers don't own or control the workplace. The people who work there have no agency. The people who have agency don't work there. The people who work there are making money, but not for themselves. I mean, you get a nickel and a dime back, but let's tell the truth. You get enough back to make sure, A, you don't starve to death, B, you show up the next Monday. That's it, man. They don't want to pay you more than that. Anything they pay you comes out of their pocket. They don't want to pay you shit, okay? Which means they don't want you to live in a capitalist society because everything takes money. Everything takes money. So here you are, you're an employee in a workplace, in an American business. And once again, the people who own the business make the decisions. You don't make the decisions. And you may know your job goddamned well. You may have ideas that could save that business or put it on a national scale in a month. Doesn't fucking matter. Shut up and do your job is the message because, you know, you aren't the guy who owns the place. And the result of that writ large is that you have millions of workers showing up on the job every Monday morning with no fucking permission to use their brains, to look at what they're doing and say, we could take pride in this, we could do it better, and we could offer a better product to our customers, and everything would be better. You don't get to do that. You can have that discussion, but trust me, it's not typically going to go far. And so what happens, you got a corporation with 500 people working there. You got this handful of yahoos that are sitting around the mahogany boardroom table. They're making the decisions, and they may know business. You think if it's an auto company, the half dozen people sitting around that boardroom table know how to change their own oil? Fuck no, man. They don't know the business. They don't know the business. Their workers do. Their workers don't have the permission to tell them how they could do things better, to tell them where things are jumping off the rails, okay? This is a huge problem with capitalism in general and with our life in America as working people. Our life in the workplace is fucked up. Period. And what does it not give us? It doesn't give us the stuff we need to live. It gives us some money, okay? Just give us education. Yeah, it used to be OJT, right? That's not what it used to be. It doesn't give us education. In the United States, the theoretical model for health insurance coverage is you get it through your employer. You think, and that worked in the 1950s when we had massive underemployment, when corporations were scrambling to attract people to the job, and health insurance was a way to do it. That's actually the basis for our current medical system. And that's like, you ask somebody why you got this knob on the dashboard of their car, and they give you some story about, I don't know, chariots under the Roman legion. It's such an anachronism, it's grotesque. But that's where we are, So our life in the workplace is messed up under capitalism. Then the flip side happens, right? Because we have to be the producers and the consumers. We keep both ends of this mess running. Then you go to the supermarket and you don't have control of that either. Working people don't control, if we want to be honest about it, our consumption or our production. You know, uh, we're just little willing weenies. We're just, tools with no agency. And that's not a good way to excel. So this is a big issue I have with capitalism. I freaking hate it. It's stupid. It wastes human potential. Okay? Racism and sexism. Oh, what does that have to do with capitalism? Well, I'll tell you what. Racism and sexism are deliberate and conscious features of capitalism. And the reason they are deliberate and conscious features of capitalism is twofold. And of course, the first and most obvious thing is when you shit all over people of color and you shit all over women and you shit all over gay people, okay, you set the stage for their oppression and you can hire them and pay them less. I should have thrown immigrants in there too, ditto. Yeah, let's mention the immigrants. Same deal, anti-immigrant sentiment goes with the sexism, the racism, and so on. And yes, you can oppress those people directly then when you have those things in place. But the other thing you can do, because they compete with the rest of the working class, right, is you've just screwed the rest of the working class as well. This is the big joke. That racist asshole who is hating on all of his fellow citizens of color, he doesn't understand that he is actually collaborating with the bosses to screw himself, because organized labor is where it's at. If he made common cause with immigrants, with people of color, with women, with gay people, with transgendered people, the working class would be much stronger and would be much more able to advance its demands in the society and get them satisfied. But no, obviously that goes against the material self-interest of the people who run things, the fraction of 1% of the population that actually owns virtually all of our means of production. I don't have a really better term for the means than that. And we didn't even talk about the wars yet. Hey, because it's the wallpaper, right? As Americans, we grow up with war. As Americans, from the time you're a toddler, there's something on the TV. And man, what's on the TV is probably either cops or war. We're immersed in both. The thing about capitalism, or a thing about capitalism, is that it is a fundamentalist worship of profit. Thou shalt have no other gods before profit. Okay? Other systems of economy and society, we had an enough idea. You're out there and you have reaped enough grain and you have stored enough firewood that you are set for the winter. That's enough. In a pre-capitalist village, that's a great freaking time. That's when everybody says, we've got the hard stuff done. It's time for the fiestas. Let's fetch the beer and the tequila. Let's get out the guitars because it's time to make happy. We don't have that under capitalism. What we have is competing capitalists who are competing extranationally, internationally, for labor, for markets, for natural resources. That's why we have constant war. Again, not to, harp on my status as a boomer and an old fart, but I've been on the planet a long time. I was born in 1956. I was the son of a World War II veteran who was PTSD'd out of his fucking mind. I mean, all love to my dad, but he was a good man, but he wasn't right after what he went through in World War II. Which, immediately after that, we had the Korean conflict, and then we had the Vietnam conflict, which ultimately took the life of my brother due to exposure to Agent Orange. And following those conflicts, and oh yeah, there were just all sorts of little coups and intrigues and bullshit going on in Latin America that the U.S. government had its fingers in, absolutely positively. The U.S. government, with the better known wars that have been going on over more than a half century, right? I mean, ever since World War II, there have also just been a host of coups, intrigues, assassinations, all the other ways that the U.S. empire controls a substantial part of the planet and does what they have to do to extract the natural resources and make sure that our rich people get a whole lot richer. Endless war. Since the end of World War II, the U.S. military, between the overt and the covert, is responsible for the deaths, and I would qualify them as the needless deaths of over 20 million people. And it's about fucking time that we put an end to that. I think I've hit the high points. I think this is enough reason for me to be a passionate and revolutionary socialist. The waste of everything that we're experiencing, I didn't even cover the destruction of the environment. Shame on me. Hey, it ties right into the war thing. Who is the world's number one most toxic institution when it comes to environmental destruction? Well, it's the U.S. military, They got to spend that $1 trillion on something. All that shit runs on gasoline or diesel for the most part. What do you think was going to happen, huh? Deploying Agent Orange and all that other shit. And you're worried about being green. You can't be green with the U.S. military. I'm sorry, you can greenwash it, but that's about all you're going to get. So again, this is why I'm a socialist. Because I love people. Because I think it is the most unimaginable crime that a working person in the United States can go from cradle to grave with their potential completely unrealized. They might be the next Einstein who spent their entire work life mopping floors. Okay? That's what it's like here. People don't get the education that they need to live a full life and realize their full potential. To even, it's not all about, we think of education as being about work and how much you can earn, but no. Becoming as well versed as possible as in those things that interest you and those things for which you have a passion, that which we call education is part of your fulfillment, and your full human development. Okay, and we don't have it. For the rich, we have it. Everybody else going tits deep in debt for a piece of paper that doesn't even get them a job anymore that they were hoping for. We don't have medical in this country like we should. Okay, something like 70,000 people per year in the United States die simply because they couldn't afford the medical care they needed to not die. That's a horrible crime. And that also ties into the realization of human potential, because if you are chronically ill or dead, you are obviously not going to reach your human potential. And we could keep on going down the line. This is simply, capitalism is not a system designed to meet the needs of its constituents. It is a system designed to make obscene profits for a tiny fraction of 1% of the population while the rest of us twist in the wind, and I am willing to end it by whatever means is necessary. Folks, thank you for listening and have a great day.